Hi, I'm Dr. Rod Gibson and welcome to my bike surgery. Thank you if you've been in touch to tell us about the problems you've been having with your bikes, and I'm going to be trying to suggest some remedies for you. Each week I invite a viewer into my bike workshop and we try to turn frustrated bikers into happy ones. This week, Clive Firth from Great Bar, Birmingham is my guest at my workshop in Hebden Bridge. He's made the journey to Yorkshire with his beloved 1977 Goldwing Trike. Clive has to ride a trike due to a leg injury 30 years ago, which means he can't hold a solo bike weight. But the machine that gives him so much freedom has got many a grumble. So let's find out what these are and let's start the programme with a solid diagnosis of what is wrong. Whoa, that's quite a beast, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, fantastic. On the Goldwing Trike, eh?
Yeah, sound all right.
Sounds beautiful, yeah. What's it like to ride?
She's fun to ride. She's,
yeah.
handles nice. I think she handles nice anyway.
Yeah.
I just think she's lacking something in the power.
Right.
I just feel 1,000 engines should just pull a bit better.
Right.
And I'm starting to notice now that she smells sweet, as if, you know, rich, as if she's just burning petrol.
Right, so she might need a little bit of TLC and perhaps just a little bit of fettling to make
something like that, yeah. Or we could shoot it, couldn't we?
I hope we won't come to that, Clive, I'm sure it won't. Shall we have a go at getting her in the workshop so we can sort it out?
Yeah.
OK. Clive's Trike is based on the now legendary Honda Goldwing, although at its launch in 1974 at the Cologne Bike Show, its legendary future actually wasn't assured. In fact, the first Honda Goldwing didn't really know what it was meant to be. The flat four-cylinder GL1000 didn't really fit into any class. It was too heavy to be a sports bike, and the very upright seating position certainly killed any sporting aspirations. But the GL1000 became a very reliable bike, able to be ridden huge distances without any trouble, and soon aftermarket companies started making touring accessories such as special panniers and fairings. And so Honda started developing the Goldwing into the touring legend we know it as today. On this Goldwing, a Reliant axle has been fitted into the back of the original suspension, and it's given Clive a very useful and workable outfit. I'm just scratching my head as to what the problem may be though, and it sounds as though the carburetors may not be quite set up properly. So that's the first thing I want to have a look at. Right, the first thing I'd like to do on this Trike, Clive, is to have a look at the spark plug colour. Now I'm hoping that's going to give me an indication as to what's happening with the carburetors. Now in order to get at the spark plugs, I've got to take these bits of trim off. This is actually a lovely bit of aftermarket tinware that someone's fitted just to make the thing glitter in the sunshine. But just slightly slow the job down. So I've taken those screws out of the top, and now I should be able to very carefully lift that away. Let's make sure we don't drop that and scratch that. That's a nice aftermarket bit of trim. That's the original Goldwing trim. That would have been fitted there at the factory, but the other bit's been added on. Right, now we can see the spark plugs down here. This is the cylinder that we think is running a little bit too rich. So I'm going to take both spark plugs out and let's compare them and see what we can actually see. This particular engine design is what's called a wasted spark ignition system. And what that means is you have one ignition coil that fires two spark plugs at once. So as long as you swap the correct two ignition leads round, it will work fine. Get it wrong and it won't. But, oh dear, they're a little bit tight. It looks like this might have been a while since they've been out. Has this been serviced recently at all, Clive?
I had a friend have a look at it over just before Christmas, but this Fox Jimmy couldn't work out why it wasn't...
Right. Now then, if I just pass that one to you, that actually looks quite black and sooty. That looks far too black and sooty.
So what does that mean?
Something is getting too much fuel into the cylinders. It's a little bit early to say exactly what's causing the problem, but certainly the carburetors are in fact the suspects. And if you look at that one, you can see the difference. And it looks like there's too much fuel going into that cylinder and not enough into that one. The first thing I'd like to do now is we'll clean those up, and then we'll have a look at the carbs and see if we can improve things. Now, spark plug condition is very important to the running of any engine. Of course, if the plugs get covered in soot, it won't spark properly and the engine won't run properly. Now, even if the fault doesn't lie with the spark plugs, something like carburation can upset the whole system. But the first thing I have to do is clean these spark plugs, make sure they're spotless and I'm getting a good spark. And I'll also be checking the gap on the contact breakers to make sure that the ignition system is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Right, now I've cleaned the spark plugs up, Clive, you can see they look a little bit healthier. That one actually looks to be quite badly worn, but it should still work okay. At some point in the future I'll think about getting some new ones, but this certainly isn't a problem now. But what I am rather concerned about, the spark plug that we took out of that cylinder was very, very sooty, which is what I expected to find. The spark plug that came out of there wasn't. So while I do still suspect there's a problem with the carburetors, I'm wondering now if you may also have an ignition fault. Now what I'd like to do just before they go back in is just to test this for a spark, and let's make sure that both of these suppressor caps are sparking as they should. Now in order to do that, have you ever done this before, by the way? Tested it for a spark?
I've seen them where you ground them out, where you hurt them against the body, yeah?
That's it. What I'm going to do is pop those into there. Then what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm holding those so they touch the engine. Now if you can turn the ignition on, just spin it very briefly on the starter. Right, that's fine, thank you. Right, you probably couldn't see that from there, but both of these are sparking as they should do. What I'd like to do now is just fire that up and see how she's running. Checking the ignition system like this is a fairly simple procedure, and what I'm actually doing is making sure that everything in the ignition circuit is working as it should, simply by spinning the engine and looking for a nice spark at the plug. If all the ignition components are working correctly, that should be a big fat blue spark, but a lack of spark would mean serious problems in the ignition circuit, and a vague yellow spark would certainly mean that some kind of attention was required. Now on this type of engine, it's sometimes possible to swap the HT leads around and the bike will still run okay. But by far the best workshop practice is to make sure that everything goes on the way that it came off. Right, just a few minutes for a quick coffee break, and I'm interested to hear how Clive got this Trike. How did he come to be riding this one, Clive?
I've always liked Trikes, and I actually had a motorcycle accident back in 1974, and I actually thought the biking weren't going to happen, you know, I weren't going to go back to bikes because I couldn't hold solo up. And all the Trikes I've seen, they always seem big, complicated machines, and I haven't got the knowledge, skills to build one. Yeah. Eventually, I got in touch with a Trike maker in Nottingham. Right. And he said there was an organisation in Manchester called the Disabled Motorcycle Association. Right.
Oh, what, did they actually build this one for you then?
No, well, I've gone off course a little bit. What they did, they actually was trying to find ways of getting a Trike made. And then just by chance, I actually saw this one advertised.
Have you managed to do much mileage on it, Clive? Have you been many places?
Yeah, I've done quite a lot. I think I must have put about 3,000 miles on it since July. Yeah. So I'm never off it. Even through winter, I mean, through the snow and everything. Yeah. I've been riding it. Only if I've been laid up myself for whatever reason. Right.
So it obviously suits you quite well then.
Oh yeah, I like it, yeah. And it's a bit of an eye catcher, a bit different. I'm not a poser, but it's...
That's okay, you can be on that. Shall we pop back and have a look at these carburetors then?
Yeah, certainly,
I've just got a hunch we may have something that we can sort out.
Right, you're talking about it being lubricated. I mean, I've only had the bike since July last year, and I bought a number of books. And in one book, it actually says they've got to be, well, in two of my books, it actually said they've got to be kept really nice and dry.
Some of the manuals say
and then in the other guys are saying, oh, well, what we do, we put some oil on it or some grease or something. Yeah. And I'm just wondering which is the right way to do it. And if you can do that, what's the best one to put on there?
Well, my advice is that you should lubricate them every now and again. Yeah. The problem is you can overdo it, and that's why some of the manuals say that you shouldn't. Yeah. It's also quite important to use the right kind of stuff. If you put heavy grease in there, you can cause more problems than you actually solve. In my experience, the best stuff to use is a silicone aerosol, something like this, and you just give that a little spray like that, and that'll keep it lubricated. You buy this stuff in car accessory shops for cleaning tyres and car upholstery, but this is something else you can use it for. The problem that you'll find, you see, if that does stick in there, and I think this may be what's happening on yours, is you've got 3 throttle slides which are lifting, but if that one's binding, if that one on that cylinder's binding, then it's not enough mixture going into that cylinder. So all the other 3 cylinders on your engine are working fine. They're sucking charge in and burning it nicely. But that one simply isn't delivering enough fuel. So that's definitely something to check out. Now, because we have to set the carburetors up with the engine running, the first thing we've done is brought the Trike outside so we don't get gassed with fumes. Now, what I have done is set up the carburetor vacuum gauges onto the engine like this. Down here, Clive, these are the actual carburetor mountings, and we had some blanking screws in there which allow us to put these adapter pipes on, so we can then measure the engine vacuum. What I've done is connected a rubber pipe to each of those adapter pipes, and they lead to these gauges here. Now, when I start the engine up, what that will show us is exactly what the engine's demanding of the carburetors. So if I fire it up, let's see what happens on there. Do you want to press the starter button on that? There we go. Now, if you have a look at that, the first thing I can see is that cylinder is obviously behaving very differently to the other 3.
Erratically, isn't it?
It is indeed. But what I'm going to try doing is just making an adjustment on the carburetor to see if I can bring that cylinder in line with its neighbour. Yeah. Now, to do that...
Do you want the engine off?
No, leave it with the engine running. We must do this with the engine running. First thing I need to do is slacken that off. And actually, that's already slack. Did you know that?
No.
Right, that's a lock that should be tightened up. Don't worry about it. But if I now make an adjustment to there, can you see that? Altering the reading on there.
It's moving down, below the 5, yeah?
And what I'm trying to do is make it behave the same as its neighbour. But I have to say, that does look just a little bit strange. Right. Okay, switch it off there, Clive. What I've tried to do now is make sure these two carburetors are behaving with each other and one isn't fighting against its neighbour, but there may still be some problems with Clive's engine that we don't yet know about. Come back in part 2 and let's see how it rides. Hi, I'm Dr. Rod and welcome back to my bike surgery. My guest this week is Clive Firth from Birmingham, and the reason he's not here at the moment is because he's out road testing the Trike that we worked on in part 1. So I'm looking forward to him coming back and telling me if we've managed to make any improvement. Clive has a Trike which has been built using a 1977 Honda Goldwing 1000 as a donor, but he has quite a lot of problems with it. What we've done so far is some basic tests on the ignition system to make sure that that was working properly, but I did also find that there was a problem with the carburation. I'm now slightly concerned that Clive may have a problem with one of the valves in the engine, so if there's no major improvement when he comes back, I'm going to be looking at doing a compression test and possibly moving on to check the valve clearances. Because Clive's Trike is based on a bike engine and not a car engine, it does require a little more delicate setting up than some, and we've used the carburetor balancers this morning to make sure that everything was working as well as it could be on the carburetors. But if there is another fault, that may possibly need some kind of mechanical surgery. Let's hope not. Hi Clive, how's she doing?
She seems to be running smoother.
Good.
The only thing I found was some traffic lights and I came to slow her down. She's eager to stall, but she didn't exactly stall, but she's struggling. And other than that, she does seem a lot smoother.
So we have made a difference
Yeah,
then?
I think you have, yeah.
But things aren't quite exactly as they should be just yet.
Still don't have that finish power, you know, that oomph. So I think it might be, you know, what you said before.
Yeah, there's a possibility there might be,
might
be one or two other things to look at. So it does sound like we've made an improvement. What I'd like to do now, if that's okay with you, we'll get her back in the workshop. Let's do a compression check and let's make sure the valve clearances are okay.
Yeah.
All right?
That'll be fine, thank you.
Right,
I'll get this helmet off first.
Okay, right. Right, what I'd like to do, Clive, is just pop these spark plugs out now you've been out on the Trike. Let's have a look and see if it's running any differently. You can tell quite a lot by spark plug colour. When we looked at this earlier on, of course, you were quite sooty, which meant that everything was running just a wee bit rich. Now, to be frank, I have a suspicion from the smoke I could see coming from the exhaust system as you set off, that it may still be running a little bit rich. And actually that now looks okay. Let's just have a look at this other. But it's possible that we may need to spend some time setting up the carburetors. And to get them right, they might need fully stripping down, I'm afraid. But that's a bridge we'll cross later on. Yeah, and if you look at that one, that's quite sooty. Do you want to pop the spark plugs out of the other side?
Yeah.
You'll need the spanner, and there's a screwdriver there just to get hold of the spanner if you need it. Of course, one of the problems with carburetors like this is the carburetor unit is quite a big and chunky arrangement. So if we start dismantling all that, there's a chance that you may not be able to ride the Trike home tonight, and we don't want to do that. But at some point, I do think it might be worth getting these carburetors fully serviced.
That's the one, very petrol-y.
Yeah, that's rich. That's definitely running a little bit too rich. One of the problems that you may have here, actually, Clive, the bike is running non-standard exhaust pipes. Because obviously it's a custom vehicle, and that's frequently what happens. You'll find, they're both quite dark. They're too dark. You will find that if you fit custom pipes that allow more gas to flow through the engine, the side effect of it can be to make the plugs burn rich. So it's possible that the carburetors may not in fact be faulty, but you may need to change the jet sizes. Now, doing that is a time-consuming job. It's not a difficult one. But it does mean you have to take some time doing it, and there's a lot of trial and error involved.
So they're not fixed jets in there then?
They're not fixed jets. You can screw the jets out of the bottom of the carburetors and fit new ones. But finding the right size is a bit trial and error, and it can take some time.
Okay.
The other thing that I was concerned about, though, is the mechanical condition of the engine. And just to make sure that everything's sound inside there, what I want to do now is a compression check. Now, the engine needs to have good compression inside the cylinders in order for it to run properly. There's a very rapid and easy way of telling whether it can do that or not. This is a compression tester. And all I'm going to do now is offer that down into the spark plug holes, and we'll do these one at a time. Let's try that cylinder because we think that one's more healthy. What I'm going to ask you to do now, if you turn the ignition on, hold the throttle wide open and just give it a very quick spin on the throttle, and we should see that needle come up. It won't start, but just a very quick spin on the throttle.
Throttle wide open.
Okay, throttle wide open, and again. Right, I'm not getting a reading on that at all. Maybe my gauge doesn't fit your engine properly. Right, have another go. That's better. Right, can you see the reading on there?
Yeah.
Right, and that tells us how much compression there is in the engine. Now that was up to just below 120.
Yeah.
I'm reading off the black scale, which is the old imperial scale, and that's pounds per square inch. Now that's pretty good. What you're looking for is around the same compression reading from each cylinder. So what was that compression test all about? Well, any engine needs compression inside it in order to ignite the fuel properly and make it burn. The good news on Clive's Trike is that all cylinders were giving compression readings above 120 psi, which is excellent and far better than I'd expected. Now we've checked the compression and that's actually fine, but I'm still slightly concerned about the valve clearances, so what we'll do next is check the clearances. Now what we've managed to do, Clive, is get the engine positioned in the right place, but it's been quite tricky, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because the Trike's got an axle on it and a differential, the ideal way to do this is to put it in gear and roll the thing backwards and forwards, but we've eventually managed to find the timing mark for the front cylinder. What I'm going to do now is remove this cover from here. This cover covers up your valve gear, and you've got one at each side, of course. And these 4 bolts hold it in place. Now what you will find is that Honda use bolts like this to hold cam covers on. Most of the other manufacturers don't. And you do need to be a little bit careful with these bolts as well, because I'm afraid I have found with past experience, if you're not too careful when you put them back together, they can actually shear off. So we'll be treating these quite delicately. There we go, there's a cover coming loose. The other thing that's worth looking at at this stage as well is each one of these bolts has a conical rubber seal on it, and they can perish and get damaged. And actually, looking at some of those, some of these aren't in fantastic condition. So at some point it might be worth replacing those.
And they have to be genuine, not just a case of organs or...
They've got to be the genuine Honda seals. But if you go to a good Honda dealer, they should be able to sell them to you. And they won't cost a huge amount of money. The cover itself also has a rubber seal on. Oops, and those are the bolts coming loose. That rubber seal there, you can use over and over again. If at some point you find it does begin to leak, again, it's not too expensive to replace it with a new one, but you don't need a new one every time, as you do with some engines. Right, let's just put that aside and let's see what we're looking at here. This is the valve gear for these 2 cylinders. And you've got an inlet valve, which is there, and an exhaust valve, which is there. And each one of these has an adjuster on it, which is that screw and lock nut there. Now what we need to do, now we've got the engine set up in the right position for this cylinder, we can check to make sure that the gaps are right in there.
Have they got to be equal top and bottom?
Actually, on this particular engine they do. But if you're working on anything else, always check your workshop manual, because the settings do vary from bike to bike. Right, we've checked that cylinder, that's fine. That's the one I was bothered about. That's okay. What we will do now is we'll turn it over, we'll do the same thing on that side, and then we'll do the same thing on the other 2. And then I think it's time for a cup of coffee. Don't you?
That sounds good to me.
Okay, let's do that then. Right. And if you're wondering what wood carving like this has to do with motorcycle maintenance, well, this is Clive's big secret, because you actually make these, don't you, Clive?
That's right, yeah. I have a much neglected wood carving shop now, because I actually, since buying that, I'm just on that all the time. I trike, do a bit of carving, trike some more, trike some more, maybe do a bit of cleaning up in the workshop, and then trike some more.
I guess it's pretty time consuming making something like this. How long does it take to produce a carving like that?
Something like that. I think it was something like 5, maybe 6 days, but it wasn't continuous carving, it was just like 4 hours a day.
It must be pretty intensive stuff though. You must get really focused on what you're doing to produce something like that.
It's a way of escapism. It's a way of escapism. It's English lime wood. Pear cut out for glasses. Pear wood turned on a small miniature lathe that I improvised using a drill and a nail and a piece of wood, which is another story.
So you made a lathe from a nail?
A nail, yeah. Nail became the tailstock and the drill became the headstock.
Anyway, shall we go and have a look at this trike? What I'd like to do next, actually, Clive, we've more or less checked most of the things that needed checking, and I'm actually now quite confident that there's no major mechanical problem with your trike. I'm sure you'd be relieved to hear. I do think there's a carburation problem, but the last thing that I would like to check out while you're here today, let's have a look at the ignition system and just let's make sure that that's doing exactly what it should do.
That'd be brilliant.
So, okay. Right, Clive, the last job I want to have a look at on your trike is, of course, the ignition timing.
Yep.
Now, we've already checked everything else out, so we may as well check it. I don't think there's a problem with it, but let's just make sure. Now, on this old Goldwing, of course, you used to have points ignition, which is contact breakers. More modern bikes would have electronic ignition. But on this one, unless somebody's converted it, I'm expecting to see 2 sets of points underneath this cover here. Have you had a look in here before at all?
I've seen them, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's 2 sets.
So there are 2 sets of points in there?
I've been told it's a good idea to swap them over onto an electric ignition, but I haven't got the ability or the knowledge to do it yet, so I'll wait and see.
An electronic ignition kit is actually quite a good idea. In many respects, it's more reliable than this old-fashioned contact breaker setup, in that once you've put electronic ignition on and set it up, you can more or less leave it forever. This system here, however, will require occasional maintenance. So what I want to do today is just check that the points gaps are correct and make sure the points are opening and closing as they should. Now again, the easiest way to do this on a bike is to have it on the centre stand and turn the engine over to the right place. We can't quite do that with the trike with its rear axle. So what I'm going to do is turn the ignition on and just touch the starter a couple of times, and what I should be able to do, hopefully, thank you, is just pull the clutch lever in, just a touch, and right, if you leave it there, I think we've got a gap now at that side. So now that actually looks spot on. Can you see that? Just turn the ignition off again while I check it. Yeah. So we don't short the points out. But there. Can you see that feeler gauge going into there? Yeah. Well, what an interesting day we've had today. It's rather unfortunate I couldn't solve all the problems with Clive's trike, but at least we do now at least know what the problem is. Come back and join me next week when we'll have another biker with another project.